Hello, beautiful souls. Welcome to another episode of Embrace the Face, Season 4, celebrating all things weird and wonderful. I'm so excited to bring you a very special guest today, Mr. Adam Bernstein. Adam, thank you so much for joining.
Oh, you're welcome. Unfortunately, there seems to be some Wi-Fi connection issues going on, so fingers crossed.
Yes, we're gonna try and get through this. So, Adam and I met Adam recently. I went to his channeling and mediumship retreat in upstate New York. Our mutual, so my grandma Reiki sensei and Adam know each other for many years, and he ran a retreat recently, and a bunch of us got together, and it was an incredible three days of really just tapping in, channeling, meditating, reading each other, practicing, honing in on our skills. And it has since kind of segued in my life in the things that I do for others. And I'm holding a 5-day free psychic challenge in early June, June 2nd to 6th. And I was telling Adam, I said, I would love to have you on, come share your story because you have an incredible healing story. And I just feel that you have so much to offer the world in your background in psychic and mediumship, and just sharing with the world your wisdoms and knowledge. So, Adam, I want you to take a few moments to just introduce yourself and share your story. Thank you
Well,
for being
thank you so much, Ali, and it's thanks for having me here. So I'm Adam Bernstein, and of course we're all psychic to a greater or lesser degree. We're all born psychic, and then through socialization we lose it. But the interesting thing is growing up. Well, when I was really little, I kind of remember my mom saying things like, "Oh, you're talking to the people that aren't there again," and that kind of a thing, and there are other like instances of things that I had picked up on that I couldn't have known, like what my grandmother looked like that died before I was born, what she wore, what her name was, all the stuff. By the time I was like 4 or 5, I was able to get that stuff. But anyway, kind of faded into the background. Other than the fact I could always forecast weather, that was like a gift that I always seemed to maintain, like even through what I call the dark days of high school, going to college, where all I cared about was fitting in. But anyway, so it was I was 19 one day. I was riding my bike, and all of a sudden I got this flash of light, and it was like my first spiritual shaking. I used to call it an awakening, but it was just the beginning, and it just happened. And then all of a sudden I was like in my mind, I was looking around and just thinking that everything that I'd learned up until now is a complete lie, and now I have to learn the truth, which didn't really work out so well in college because my grades slipped. I have to say, because my interests changed, but but for the weeks and even months that followed, I had these crazy like psychic things happening. Like I'd start to see colors around objects and people. I would wake up one morning and think about somebody I haven't seen in a month and see them that day. And I'd be talking to people, and I know what they were going to say before they were saying it, and I could just meditate, and the winds would blow and clouds would form. I mean, it was wild. It was like just defying like physical law. And after a few months, that kind of faded somewhat, I have to say, but some of the abilities kind of stuck with me. And then, as time went on, I got very withdrawn, kind of became very empathic. Like I could literally see two faces on people, their real face and the one that they showed the world. That was like literally being two-faced, right? And just realized that everybody's like hiding stuff, and it just freaked me out for a while. And I got, unfortunately, well, I should say unfortunately, because all of our experiences, bad, good, and ugly, make us who we are now, right? It's all part of our spiritual growth. So I got into drugs pretty heavy, and other things. And at one point I was meditating on a mountaintop, and my guide just said, "You've gone as far as you can go. Now you've got to go back into the world." And within a year, I was in jail. Then I had a terrible job. I went through a lot of miserable things. But the point being is that I had really worked on elevating my upper chakras, so my intuition was really great. Like I can meditate, and birds would fly like right over my head, animals would come up to me. Like I had all these gifts, but I was just so overly empathic. I felt everything. I was isolating from people. If I went out to socialize, I'd have to have a drink or two just to not feel their crazy energy. And it's just getting worse and worse. And what I've learned now, like this is, I'm 66 now, so we're going back a long ways. So what I learned from from that, later on, what I realized was that my lower chakras were completely like non-functional. Basically, it was all my upper chakras. So I had to go through a lot of challenging things on the earth plane to learn my lessons to grow. And now, as I'm older, after several years, I started to develop more holistically and started to do a lot of the shadow integration and relieve that. So, but the psychic abilities never quite went away, right? So they never fully went away. And I started to do readings, then professionally in 1993, the mediumship around 2000, which is an interesting story in itself also, because, well, we're here to talk, right? So I'll share. We're here to
Share
share,
away, share
right?
away.
So anyway, I had been working. I'm from New York City. I was working at a Wicca curio shop in the East Village. People, that are Wicca neo pagans knew that shop as like a mecca. It was called Enchantments in the East Village. And every now and then I hear somebody come in. Like I was like, how old was I? My 30s, early 30s then. It was in the 90s. Every now and then people will come in. Have you heard of this kid named John Edward? Yeah, this is back in the 90s. It's like, he's 16 years old and he's amazing. He's doing the psychic fairs. He's amazing. But then around 2000, he had his premiere to the show Crossing Over, and he described how he got information. And during that time, I was doing tarot readings, a little bit of palmistry, a little bit of astrology, a little bit of straight psychic work. But increasingly, I'd start to get hits from the other side. And I'd tell people, well, I'm not really a medium, but I feel your mother's here, and she looks like this and saying this. And I'd say 2 out of 3 times they'd validate, exactly that. And I was getting curious about it. And then when he had his show, basically, he described how he got information, like he'd get feelings, he'd get his own memories would come up, would get symbols. Everything he was saying was like, well, this happens to me, this happens to me, this happens to me. So I often called John Edward my first teacher, even though I only met him once many years afterwards, on Long Island with
That.
Mindy Landon, who I did the psychic fairs with, who John Edward, was called the Long Island Psychic Fairs. And you're a Long Islander, you might have heard of that. So that's where John Edwards started. But so I was curious if I could do this, and I had experience with a friend where her mother passed, and she was saying she's here for New Year's because she was wondering why her mother was around. She said not Christmas or not Thanksgiving, she's here for New Year's, and she just started crying and said that was our holiday. That was more important to us than Christmas and any other time. And then I had there's an astrologer named Janet Woodbury, she went by, and she did psychic fairs in New Jersey. And we kind of became friends, and I did a reading for her, and I told her, I'm getting your mother coming through, and I described her, I described the cancer and all that stuff. And then she told me, well, who you're picking up on is Phyllis Woodbury, who's a very famous psychic in the 1960s. Next to Jean Dixon, she's the most famous psychic out there. And she said that was the only mother figure I ever had, so much so that she took her last name. She was Janet Woodbury. So that was cool. So anyway, next up, I was really curious, and I was working at Quest Bookshop for 4 years at that time, doing tarot readings and psychic reading. Not once did anybody ask for a medium. Somebody asked right when I wanted to know. Set the intention, spirit delivers, right? So I was somebody called, asked if somebody could talk to the dead. The manager looked at me and I said, I'll take the reading. So I went to the back. I started to meditate. I connected with my guides. I didn't know who my guides were quite yet, but I knew I had guides. And the key to why this worked is I had no attachment to the outcome. Basically, I was like, if I'm a medium, great, I'll practice mediumship. If I'm not, I'll keep doing what I'm doing. I didn't care. And to add to the story, I got to watch the great Shelley Peck, who John Edward called his teacher work at the Queen Psychic Club that I was a part of. And she'd go, up in the dial, she'd point to the person, she'd say, Michael is here or Janet's here or whatever name she's getting and describing them. And they were just like, ooh and ah. It was like really, really amazing mediumship that she was doing. But in my mind, I was saying, this is great, but what difference does it make? They are dead. That was my mindset back then. So I had to lay the groundwork for the story. So the gentleman comes in. I fast forward back to Quest Bookshop. He's maybe in his mid-40s. He's Middle Eastern, I believe. So I shook his hand. I get father, like right away. Father. The number 10 comes in my mind. I experienced a sharp pain in my chest just for a second. The letters REN and the image of an airplane. So I sat down with him. I told him these things. He kind of looked at me wide-eyed. He said, well, his father passed 10 years ago from a heart attack. He had a long Middle Eastern name that began with the letters REN, and he was an airplane pilot. And I mean, in a way, that's,
I
I
have
said, oh,
chills everywhere.
big,
Wow.
big, big, maybe it's beginner's luck, but it was more than that. A spirit letting me know this was my path. But it gets even better. So as I'm going on in the reading, it just came through, and I just told them, look, your father's telling me the reason that he was so hard on you was in his eyes, you were a reflection of himself. And this guy just started to cry. He just started bawling, and I was like, what do I do? I've never done mediumship before. This is my first read. I've got a grown man crying. What the heck do I do with this? So they're just all lighting it up a little bit. So we talk about like family events or whatever. So anyhow, when the reading was done, he shook my hand and he said, for 10 long years, I've been carrying this burden of guilt and pain, and 1 hour with you and I can let it go forever. So
Oh, I love
that
that.
was not only was Spirit letting me know I can do mediumship, they were telling me why to do mediumship. And then I think it was about 4 or 5 years later, my brother died. My mother couldn't handle it. He died unexpectedly. I went to I lived in New York City, and I went to Woodstock, where I eventually moved to, up to Overlook Mountain, and there's like the Sea Escarpment Trail. There's a beautiful trail up there. I camped out around the rock quarries. The third day he came to me, just we had a strained relationship, and you say, now I understand you, blah blah blah, and all that stuff, and then a brilliant medium in the city in the next psychic fair that I went to by the name of David Hewlin. I don't know what happened to him. He picked up his name and told me basically the exact same thing that he told me on the other side. But then, and then I was bringing people to the apartment. I was living at home at the time. So I was living in a New York City apartment, me, my girlfriend, my parents, 4 cats in a tiny apartment. It was hysterical, but there's reasons for that. One, I needed a fresh start. Two, we thought my dad was going to die, and I wanted to be there, and he didn't die. He actually outlived my mom and everybody in the family. Um, but in any event, she wound up dying 2.5 years later. I just was like, you know what? I've got this gift. I need to do something with it. So I found a teacher in Lilydale named Sharon Klingler. I started studying with her, and that's what got me on the path of mediumship, basically.
I love it. I First of all, I have to tell you, you made me cry. I've never recorded a podcast episode, and like literally,
Oh,
um, we have a very similar story. I know that like we met each other, we practiced reading on each other, but like I have such a
and you
similar
did
story.
very good.
Oh, thank you. Just from drowning things out with alcohol and drugs to numb it out, to not have to see what you're seeing, to not have to feel what you're feeling. I know
Yeah.
I know that so well. And I thank you for sharing. Thank you for like I just love the fact that you were in the heart of the village during like the most amazing times, and you also had a yoga. You did yoga, right? You had a yoga
Oh,
studio.
I've been doing yoga. I really got started with martial arts training actually, and part of it was yoga too. But I was doing an eclectic form of martial art, combining Wing Chun, which is a form of kung fu, and then Eskrima or Kali Arnis, which is Filipino, and other things, Tai Chi,
Yes.
all that stuff, and that's kind of what started to open me up. And I had that experience maybe eight months after I started doing martial arts. But yeah, I do the Kundalini yoga and other forms of yoga, Hatha yoga, Vinyasa, from the hatha system. So I do a couple different songs. Okay, it says we are reconnecting.
Yes, we're reconnecting. I'm sorry. So after Kundalini yoga. So yeah, so I have that tie too with Tai Chi. How you so I think I told you this, and I think I've shared this with listeners that in my last corporate nursing job, I was the injury prevention coordinator. So I had to teach trauma injury prevention. And when I interviewed the woman who became my boss, I laughed in my interview, did not think I was going to get the job. She told me, "You'll have to become a Tai Chi instructor to help teach others like fall prevention, injury."
Wow.
And I laughed and I was like, oh my God, I flew in for the interview. I said to my husband, I said, I'm not going to get this job. I laughed because they told me I have to be Tai Chi certified. So these were my drinking days, my not greatest days, like still drowning the world out, still drowning out the truth. And I took this job and I trained as a Tai Chi instructor and I learned what Chi was. And I learned about energy and it opened
Yeah.
whole world. And I loved that if you ever go to a retreat with Adam, he opens up the morning with a meditation and some Tai Chi. And it just like made my heart so happy. And I love that you are the embodiment of what it means to just honor who you are and your gifts. And
Thank you.
there's something so special about that and authentic and vulnerable. I also like I just feel like I personally have learned so much from you. I feel like if I were to be on if I were to be on an interview like in my 60s, I'd be like, Adam Bernstein taught me like all these things. And really, you really did. Like I've been doing readings for the latter like 4 years and in like finally for money. Like I've always been messing around and like being, friends and family and like telling them crazy things. But I started making it in an income source 4 years ago. And I really only thought I was ever a psychic. I would have like loved ones come in and pass along messages, and looking back, like I always did that, but I never labeled myself as a medium. And then until it's so funny you say that, until somebody said to me recently, Allie, you can do mediumship, right? And I said, well, yeah, I have like people come through the past, but I've never like called myself that. So this woman sat down and like to a T, just everything about her boyfriend had passed and the things, the way that they used to just snuggle in bed, the way that they used to, the garden and the roses and the gate and the like things that come through that you're telling these people and they're crying in front of you. I've had the grown man cry too. And it's like, what is happening? Like, there is something to this, and there's so many externals in the world, and we did talk about this at the retreat, that can make people in this line of work like be judged, right? And we've talked about this, and the whole idea even of Mary Magdalene we talked about, right? We talked about can you share, because you and I have channeled very similar information on via Mary Magdalene and her insights.
Yeah, so it only happened once. I tried to do a channeling with her again, but it didn't have the same effect. But one time I set the intention, she definitely came through. It was also July 22nd, which is her feast day. So
Mm.
on July 22nd, people all around the world, celebrate the Magdalena basically. So she basically came through. She's talking about her relationship with Jesus, how he really survived the so-called crucifixion, and that it was more of an initiation. And the interesting thing was I drew parallels between the crucifixion, we'll call it that anyway, of Christ, to the Sundance ceremony that the Lakotas do. And basically, they train hard. The dancers train hard because what they do is that they do sweat lodge, and then they get basically pierced from behind with a hook, and they hang from a tree for 4 days, and I guess that's the dancing. I don't know, but they basically they're suspended from a tree for 4 days, no food, no water. Our bodies are so amazing. Ask a doctor what would happen to you if you did a sweat lodge and then didn't have any water for 4 days. Your doctor said you'd be dead, but they
Yeah.
survived that because we can transcend the flesh and tap into something greater. So anyway, basically, she likened it to an initiation process. He wasn't impaled. I mean, from what I gathered, it was like hanging from a tree. Basically, maybe they made it the shape of a cross. I didn't get it in that detail, but likened it to an initiation where we went from being a sixth level to seventh level initiate. And once you reach that level, you don't need the body anymore. You transcend the body. He, Jesus, Yeshua was, obviously one of the great spiritual masters, ever, right? Okay. Wi-Fi issues. But do we not want to tell the story? It says it's reconnecting.
I got it. So you
But
transcend the body. Yeah.
but basically, I was getting that, and she was kind of saying we weren't like married, but we were together. Basically, we were doing a lot of work
Interesting. It's
together.
pausing.
And I know in some of the texts they talk about them being married and having children and everything, which may have happened. It just didn't come through in that particular channel. But that's basically, I don't remember some of the stuff, but that's basically some of the stuff that came through around that time. But usually when I channel, it's the master teachers, which is a group of interdimensional beings that work with me and work with us to help raise our frequencies and help us to ascend and to awaken, basically, and the archangels. So also Sekhmet, the goddess Sekhmet, has come through a few times. Also the Egyptian lion goddess, and one of the channels, Sekhmet was saying that there were really 12 of us, 12 Sekhmets, that we were Lyran Lyran, from Vega. That's where we're according to Dolores Cannon and others through a process of thousands under hypnosis saying the exact same things in different corners of the world, basically.
Yeah.
That
I'm a
the
huge Dolores canon. I've done QHHT like 10
Good for
times.
you. I figured that I was speaking your language. So anyway, they were saying there were really 12 segments. They were, basically travelers from the Vegas, the Lyran system, Vega and the Lyran system,
Mm.
and they were helping, like a lot of the ancient deities we believe were really extraterrestrials. And you think 3,000 years ago, if somebody, like, if a silver ship landed in front of you and some being walked out of it, you think that was a god also.
Oh yeah, so true. Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it's all so interesting and how this channeled
yeah,
information comes
it all
through.
connects. Yeah,
It all connects and it all just goes back to one source, right? And we're all just trying to
right, exactly.
tap into this one source and just live as the best version of us. So I also, would you mind sharing a little bit about because I do a lot of self-healing as well as ascension. Do you shared a little bit about your skin health and how you've
Oh,
cleared
yes.
up your skin health. You want to share that a little bit?
Sure, yeah, and it's again, we are amazing beings. We're sort of programmed into being, still on the primitive side of the evolutionary spectrum in our being in our thinking. But once we are able to open up new potentials that are locked within dormant DNA, we tap into higher healing abilities. But our primitive healing systems are amazing. We get cut, our bodies repair itself. We get a virus, our body attacks it. So even that's amazing to think we have something higher. Well, I had eczema. It started when I was 4 months old, according to my mom, around 4 months. Now, even in 1950, I guess that'd be 1959. I was born in 58. Even then, your first schedule of vaccines would be between 4 and 6 months, right? Even back then. So, coincidence? Maybe that
Mm.
this whole autoimmune thing started when I started getting vaccines. But anyway, I'm digressing a tad. So I had in my whole life very severe eczema. It was intermittent but severe growing up. In adolescence, it was horrible, covered head to toe, and I had to go on very, very, very powerful steroids. Then it went into partial remission in my 20s. Like I'd get outbreaks, but then it would go away. But once I hit age 30, it was that was it, done. And lots of powerful, like this, one of the strongest topical steroids just to live a halfway normal life. So it was horrible. The chief dermatologist at NYU Hospital with over 30 years of experience, just told me I had the worst case of eczema he'd ever seen, and told me the form of eczema that I had was basically the itch was the only itch that was worse than that, he said, was people recovering from third-degree burns, basically. So, to give you a little bit of background. So, anyway, horrible, horrible. I go through my little paces of just cursing God and wanting to kill myself and blah, blah, blah. I know we've all been through our own pity parties and
Mhm.
everything, but where year was it? I think we were around 2014. That was the beginning, and I had one especially bad night, no sleep. I've been known to go weeks without sleep when it was really bad, and just bake out in the sun because the sun helps suppress the eczema some. So I spend way too much time in the sun and all that. But anyway, I had a really bad night, and I just when I came around, I was like, this isn't working. I just got to stop doing this. I've got to stop this victim, this anger, and all this stuff. So I went out, and it was a sunny day too. So I went out to a park a few miles from me, did some yoga. By the time I was done, I was not itching at all. And even when I was in between flare ups, there'd always be some itching. I was not itching at all. And then I went into my car, popped the radio on the Woodstock station, and the song, which got virtually no airtime at all, by Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. He's back with the Heartbreakers. It's called "The First Flash of Freedom." What's the name of the song? You know how Spirit talks to us from the album Mojo. Great undiscovered album. Unless you're a Tom Petty fan, you probably
Love
know
Tom
that.
Petty. Love Tom Petty.
Oh, you probably love Mojo too. It's a little
I
bit more bluesy and
I
jazzy than some of
love
his other stuff.
I love it
So
a lot.
yeah, yeah. So you can, if you don't know that song, it's the First Flash of Freedom, um, and that was my message. So it took years to eradicate it, and I went on different diets. I mean, I spent thousands on natural cures, this medicine, this diet, that diet. I at one point I was only eating rice, just trying to figure out what I was allergic to or what was setting it off. I figured it's probably the rice, but anyway, it's another story. Um, so I did this leaky gut syndrome diet, and it got better, but then it came back. But I started just on my own, just because I knew a lot of through martial arts and through other teachers about mind over matter. So every day, no matter how I was feeling in my mind, I visualized there's no itching. I'm not using steroids. My skin's perfect. I'm perfect. Yeah, I mean, I'd have breaks. I'd have periods where I'd get angry and I'd stop for a while. It took about 3 years for this to happen, but that's what I do. Meditate, and in my mind, the reality that my skin is perfect became more real than the physical reality of itching and these awful steroids. It was toasting my liver and making my skin paper thin also. And this was before I knew about Joe Dispenza. I often joke to my friends, if I knew about Joe Dispenza then, it probably would have taken 1 year instead of 3 years to do this.
Oh, I say
Because
the
he's
same thing.
he's all about mind over matter, right? And all about raising our frequencies to tap into these higher abilities. So I did the leaky gut syndrome diet again. You do for about 3 months. There's limited carbs. There's no sugar. I mean, I cheated with a little bit of coffee and sugar, but it's like a paleo diet, similar with supplements, which isn't the easiest for a vegetarian, but I figured it out. Um, it went away completely, never came back, never had to go back on the steroids. And yeah, and I did the similar with my back with scoliosis and the displaced vertebrae, and through the power of yoga and mind over matter, I'm at the time of my life where it should be deteriorating. In fact, my first chiropractors told me that when I was in my 30s, that by the time I was 50, I'd probably need a walker or a wheelchair, and I didn't go back to that. I didn't go back to that chiropractor. I found a different one. I said, "F that. That's not going to happen." And by when I was 50, I could walk on my hands. I wanted to walk into that office and walk on my hands. Do you remember me? But that's my, that's
Oh,
my
that
little ego
that
mind.
amazing. It's true. It's the ego mind. So I thank you so much for sharing. I love Joe Dispenza. I agree. When I
Me
first heard
too.
about him 6 years ago, I don't know if you know this, so I only just met you a few months ago, but up until like late last year, I was utilizing a cane like almost every day.
No,
Um,
that I didn't know. I
yeah,
wouldn't have known from the retreat.
yeah, so I have a autonomic neuropathy, neurodegenerative. Well, I had. I say I had, right? Because
Yeah,
we don't want
exactly.
that. I was on 10 plus pharmaceuticals, steroids,
No.
Plaquenil, muscle relaxers, pain meds, neuropathy meds, gabapentin, you name it. Like I was on all of it, and I utilized Joe Dispenza's Mind Over Matter. Those of you who are not familiar, Joe Dispenza had a back injury that required insane amounts of surgery, and he chose not to. He chose to heal Mind Over Matter. And guess what? He's here today, like international world renowned author, talking about how you can heal quantum, whether,
And,
whether it's
and
visualization.
and also a doctor in chiropractic
Chiropractor.
medicine to boot.
Yes, yes, yes. He is a fascinating individual who the proof in the pudding. And then sharing that with others, and then people, you and I, sitting here saying, "Look, hey, he helped us," right? So it'll
Yeah,
full
I
circle.
love him, but just don't talk to him about Mercury retrograde or stuff like that. 'Cause you'll get a
Okay,
lecture on
okay. No.
how that's a collective mind over matter, like convincing us that Mercury retrograde's bad. But anyway,
Okay, let's actually go into that. So I was going to ask you, do you have any astrological or any prophetic visions that you'd like to share with our listeners?
sure. Well, I mean, everything's coming down, right? The whole illusion of society, this whole like control, greed paradigm in our world is coming down, and they were talking about July being really, April too. April's came and went. I mean, it was a dicey month, but honestly, wasn't quite as eventful as I pictured before going into April. But
Mm-hmm.
then in July, June, July, August, but July is a 16-month in numerology, which is in Chaldean numerology, it's the Shattered Citadel, and in tarot for the tarot readers, it's key 16 is the Tower card. So we go through 16 transits. Usually the old falls, the Tower falls to rebuild on new foundations. So yeah, I think that there's just so much that's coming out into the open. Basically, I do get a feeling like we have to watch out around the summer to see what happens with the Trump administration. Timelines are fluid, so there's a lot of different paths that we can go. But they were showing me something with him. It may not be. Sometimes we get visions, we don't know when it's going to happen. But one of the visions was like in the hospital, like in a hospital gown, motionless with a lot of IVs around him. Then another image of him, involved in an explosion, and then another about him just being forced to step down based on bipartisan resistance and everything. So there's a chance that the presidency may be in jeopardy come the summer. And my original prediction was it would be in 2.5 years, not in just a few months, basically. So that's one thing. I'm trying to just to tap into some of the others because I do feel like a lot of medical breakthroughs are coming up, a lot, like things that we don't even you think about, like they showed me a couple of years ago, even a device almost like a tricorder, like from Star Trek,
Mm-hmm.
where it would use AI and body mapping, and you'd be able to self-diagnose before you even see the doctor or know what's wrong before you even see them. I believe these things are available, they're just not available to us. like
Mm.
like AI use can be traced back to 2011, and it's probably even older than that. And our all wise algorithms that whenever I post something on social media, just like yesterday, where I point out how we're all being like programmed and herded like sheep. Like if you're left wing, there's a program for you. If there's right wing, there's another program for you. And every time I try to explain that and try to create unity, the algorithm flags it and the posts don't go anywhere. But if
Oh,
I rant about Trump or the Democrats, it's gonna fly out there. So they really want people to be angry and frustrated. So what I'm seeing as the bottom line is spiritual awakening, mass awakening. We're all already starting that. And I think, this period, it's really going to be spiking. I think a lot of the agendas behind the wars, behind things in the pharmaceutical companies, things that weren't disclosed that needed to be, basically. And I'm not an anti-vaxxer, not to sound like RFK Jr. My son's vaccinated. I got vaccinated. I'm anti, misinformation, anti-control, and I'm anti pharmaceutical companies that have shown consistently throughout the years to value profit over yours and my health and well-being. Basically, that's what I'm against. So the whistleblowers come out, people speak out, some of them die, so some of the stories get squashed the same day, some of them you never hear about. But even, back in like 2021, 2022, people started to come out. They were part of the Pfizer testing, saying, look, we knew this wasn't going to be 97% effective. We knew that this wasn't going to stop the spread of COVID. We knew that there were side effects, basically. And I would have been fine with all that if they had disclosed all that in the beginning. Every medication, including vaccines, carries a risk of side effects. Just be honest about it. And also, I could map in my mind, even in 2020, before anything came out of the CDC, I saw how the patterns of infections, happen. And I said, this virus clusters. These are the older variants. It became more airborne with the newer variants. It clusters. So in other words, like somebody may be at their office, somebody has COVID, they sit around that person for 8 hours, they get the virus, then they go home to their families, they all get it, then the kids bring it to school, the other people bring it to work, and it clusters. So basically, what that means is that it could have been controlled in a different way. They would have only involved a partial shutdown of the economy, not a full shutdown. They would have isolated areas rather than locked everything down. But anyway, I'm kind of in a bit of a tangent with that.
that's my
But
specialty, tangents. It's okay.
but in any event, getting back to point, I do believe this and some of the other things are coming out, and how money is being used. So people sometimes ask, are we going to get into a Nisara Jisara reality where everything's gold backed, and exchange rates are eliminated, income taxes eliminated? Sounds great. Jerry Brown in the 70s was talking about things like that also. It's not a new concept. So I laugh when I talk about that, and people accuse me of being a right wing conspiratist. It's like, well, Jerry Brown was a Democrat and blah blah blah. Yeah. So, but anyway,
Yeah.
whatever the case, yeah, his vision was no income tax, and add like a 14% sales tax or something like that,
Mm.
and that would eliminate the IRS, which would eliminate a lot of government spending. Hello, Doge, Elon Musk and company. Um, and uh, and it would do the same thing. Rich people buy more than poor people, so the rich would still get more tax than the poor.
Mm.
It's just too logical. And then, so why would they keep this archaic system if there wasn't corruption, if somebody wasn't benefiting? And I know this, you and I know this. It's not that complicated. If you're trying to discern conspiracy theories versus conspiracy facts, start by following the money. See who's going to benefit from it, and then you have a pretty good idea. Then you can start to connect the dots, basically. So no, I don't think that immediately that all the corruption is going to be exposed. I don't believe, that's what the Trump administration was saying. We're going to get it and we're going to expose it all. It's still going to take years, if not decades, to meet it all out. But I do believe we're in a period where a lot of it is coming out as kind of a tipping point, I think, where they were reaching. And I think more people are going to be aware of that. So what other predictions? I think we're heading into the World War III arena. New countries getting involved. I do periodic predictions on the Medium channel. That's my YouTube channel also, and I know you know that. But if
Yes, I'll share
anybody,
that for sure.
wants to get that, and I get into more detail with that. Um, great inventions and stuff like that. I don't think we're going to get into full on World War III, but I think what we have to be aware of are mass cyber attacks. I do believe that the proverbial 3 days of darkness, prophecies like Baba Vaga and others, and although I don't think it says 3 days in the Bible, but in Revelations, there's similar, and I think also the Book of Mark and certainly Exodus back in the Old Testament speaks on that, and other texts too. So I think a lot of that's going to be communication being blocked out, also not necessarily literally blackouts, but I did before the first major blackout in Europe. I talked about a large regional blackout. I've seen planes grounded, nobody traveling. So I think we're going to reach, some, more issues like that where travel's halted, supply lines are delayed. You have some food shortages, but I don't think it's going to go full on. Going back to at least gold standard or currency by the end of the year. Part of the Nasara agenda would involve cryptocurrencies, but they would have to be also gold backed. Otherwise, you can just freaking do whatever you want. I mean, I often wonder who decides what cryptos are going to go up, what's going to go down. A few of my friends got in on Ripple and made a good mini fortune from that. So
I have not delved into that as
XRP,
of yet. It's on my
yeah.
to-do list, but I don't know. I don't know if it's an intuitive thing where it's like I'm holding off, or if it's like I'm just
I've been wanting to know. I've been holding off also, and I don't know if it's intuitive or if it's a belief system that I'm actually supporting the move to digital currency by getting involved in it.
Oh, that's interesting.
Although,
Yeah, that's probably
although
my.
they say that the crypto's not really the digital currency, they're related but not.
Mm.
But I don't know. It's still currency. It's still digital from where
I
I'm sitting.
Some kind of currency's got to make the world go around. I know it's very intimidating, I
I think
guess.
it's back in 2015. I was telling somebody to get in on Bitcoins that was asking me about it. But said, and she was going through a lot of financial crisis. I have to tell you, it's going to take years for this to hit. And she was like, I heard it's going to hit by July, blah, 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 blah. And it took years before anybody made any money from Bitcoin. I haven't heard from her yet. I'd like to, because she owes me money. Like I did a reading many years ago, and I told somebody that was looking for investment, and I said they were showing me the pharmaceutical company with the P the PHZ, whatever the PZ, and like that's Pfizer. So I told them to invest in that, and I think within a year, Viagra came out. There was a
Oh
Pfizer.
wow.
People that were invested in Pfizer did pretty well around that time. Of course, the stock went back down that later on, but
No, it's so earlier I thought of the fact that people are always like, well, if you're a psychic, why don't you know the lottery numbers? And I always say, well, spirit tells you what you need to know
yeah,
now. It's not going to give you everything. It's just going to come through what you need to know in that now.
yeah, people, that's people's argument, and I'm like,
Yeah,
well, that's really shallow, but
yeah,
Spirit
yeah.
gives us what they give us. In the year 2000, I was when the Powerball first came out, I went into meditation. I asked you, give me the numbers. I could do a lot with that money. So the number 8 came through right away. Then 6 other numbers came up, and 8 was the big Powerball number. But all the other numbers were wrong, and I in my mind I could hear them laughing, like, "Yeah, we could give you the numbers, but no, we're not going
I
to."
love that. I remember you shared that at the retreat. That was
Oh,
so
did
fun.
I? I don't even
Yeah,
remember,
no, that's great. Thank you for sharing that again. I
but
do remember that. That was I mean that's the ultimate truth of it. Our guides are not
yeah.
they're not gonna let something come through that is not going to be a part of our plan.
Right, we're
Right.
not physical. This is our classroom. Most of us aren't meant
Yes.
to win a Powerball. And if you think about it, if you win all that money, you're kind of tied into that big deep state financial system. 80% of them wind up with losing all their money anyways because they don't know how to invest it or hold on to it, even if it's millions of dollars. And in my thinking, I'd love to maybe win like 25 or $50,000 to invest to upgrade my business, my computer, my YouTube. That I would love to do, but I don't think I would want to be in that energy of being one of the the mega million winners or stuff like that. That's just me personally. Other people will have different takes on that.
I agree. It can take you to very dark and low places. That's for sure.
That's what I feel. Yeah.
The ego definitely takes over for sure. Well, thank
Meanwhile,
you.
money's unlimited. Yeah, it's
Oh yeah,
like
money isn't even real to me. I don't know. That's how I've always seen it. It's
yeah,
just
it's energy, and if we don't have it, it's our thinking, our energy that's blocking it because it's there, but it's all it's many layers of programming, so it's a lot easier to say than do. But
yes, yes, it is. It's a practice. It's an art form. It's a life art form
yeah,
for sure. A lifelong practice. Well, thank you so much, Adam. I appreciate you coming on and sharing all your wisdoms. And do you have any
my
last words
pleasure.
of wisdom? Any last words of wisdom for listeners?
Yeah, basically, and this is a Joe Dispenza backed philosophy also. Couple of things. We're all awakening. What we need to do is learn how to dwell in the heart frequency. And
Hmm.
that starts with presence. So every day, we need to practice meditation. We're all connected to each other. That's a given. We're all one being and we're different manifestations of that oneness. But at the same time, we have free will and we can separate from the collective, especially because the collective is very sick and very hurting right now. But the key is getting presence and meditating. When we get present and in our breath, in our presence, then we are elevating our consciousness. And and this will be what Joe Dispenza would say. If you can find the sweet spot of the present moment, you pass through the eye of the needle into the quantum field. Now, as a medium, I might call the quantum field spirit or the realm of spirit, same thing, right? Where all everything exists, all time, all possibility exists. So the first step is getting present, that you're not your thoughts, you have thoughts. You want to just be and be present. And when you get very present and you really lock in and you feel the upgrade of your frequency in that moment, I just can't help but to feel grateful and feel compassionate. And that's how you attain heart coherence, right? So it's not rocket science. Everything in spirituality is very, very simple, but we are indoctrinated into these huge complexities to basically dumb us down in this society. Because understand, there's a war against spirituality. If people awaken, those that are controlling everybody at their benefit, which is a minute few. What is that? Like 0.03% of the populace at the detriment of a great many. Their control breaks down, so they're using all kinds of things: programming, frequency, knowledge of astrology, knowledge of occultism, ceremonial magic. Some people even believe they're satanic practices. But whatever the case, they want to block that and dumb that down. So it makes it harder for us. But when you get present and you're not in your thinking mind, then you are connecting more with spirit. So heart coherence is just feeling grateful, feeling compassionate. What do hearts do? They love, right? It's not rocket science, right? A coherent heart is a loving heart. An incoherent heart is fear, anger, all those negative emotions that they try to pound into us day after day, right? So anyway, so if another way to do this is you can just count your blessings. I'm not 6 feet under when I woke up. I woke up to a new day of living, new potential, new possibilities, and of course, I'm not homeless. I have food in my fridge. I mean, we can all find something to be grateful for, right? So if you're able to hold heart coherence, and Joe Dispenza, Heart Math Institute, and others have done studies with that,
Gonna
the
say heart.
brain blends with the heart because the heart and the brain are really two sides of the same system. The
Mhm.
heart is it's the electromagnetic generator, the largest one in the body, according to Heart Math Institute, factor 40, which is mind blowing. The brain is the transmitter and receiver of that information, and the heart and the brain have similar cells. There's brain cells in the heart also. So there's physical studies that prove this. So when you bring your heart into coherence, you bring your brain into coherence. And when that happens, you start to open up dormant potentials, intuitive potentials. You release telomerase in the body, which protects the chromosomes, so it's anti-aging. Uh, you release a gamma globulin A's, which is part of the immune system. Like I saw an interview with Dr. Joe years ago, even before COVID, when the interviewer asked him, "Do you do the flu shots, Joe?" And he looked at him, "Flu shot, flu shot. What do I need a flu shot? I do heart rate coherence. I don't need a flu shot." And they do the same thing. They increase the immunity, but this is naturally. And when the heart and the brain become coherent and blend, then you blend with spirit and source. And that's the key thing. So practice heart brain coherence, practice presence. That would be my advice now. It's simple, but our own minds are going to try to block us. So we have to be aware of that when you start to meditate, what happens? You start to dissolve filters between conscious and subconscious. The subconscious has become the storehouse for all of our unwanted memories, all our suppressed pain, because we are programmed to rather process pain to suppress it. Even babies do that. That's how deep the collective programming is. So when you start to meditate, you start to dissolve the filters and you feel anxiety. You feel very unpleasant thing that people just stop. Like, I'm not doing this. This sucks. It's uncomfortable. Or they can't shut their mind off, or they fall asleep, or manifest distraction. It's simple in theory, very hard in practice because we're programmed. So you just have to keep doing. That's how you're going to ascend the programming, basically.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Adam, I cannot. I am so grateful that you brought up Heart Math Institute. That is between Heart Math Institute and Dr. Joe, like I feel like that was
Yeah,
the root of
Greg Braden's the other heavy hitter to
yeah,
on the subject.
yeah, they were the catalyst to my own self-healing journey. In
So yeah,
all
and you're on it, and you've done it, right? You don't
yeah,
have any pain, right?
yeah, you and I are
I've been needing a chiropractor for over 2 years, and my back would go out to the point where it'd be in pain for months, and I have to go 2 to 3 times a week to get ultrasound and adjustments. I
yeah.
don't need to do that anymore. Knock on wood.
I know. I love it. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing all that you did and channeling for us. And I just appreciate you so much. And I'm sure that our listeners will. I'll share all information on Adam and how you can join his YouTube channel and watch his incredible videos, follow along, or even have a session with him. So thank you.
Yep, yep, yep.
Yeah.
You have all the website and all that info.
Yes, I will
Sure.
absolutely share everything. So thank you,
You.
everybody, for listening in. Thank you, Adam, and
My pleasure.
peace out, and God bless everyone.